All right, so get ready because today we are going to be diving deep into Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins.
Ooh, exciting.
Yeah. Um, you guys sent over like a whole stack of articles and reviews for this one. And
Yeah.
so we're going to be uncovering the secrets of this Hunger Games prequel,
Yeah.
specifically focusing on the backstory of a certain, well, I'm just going to say it, fan favorite character, Haymitch Abernathy.
Yes. This time we get to see him as a young tribute
Right.
facing a particularly brutal Hunger Games.
Yes.
The second quarter quell.
Okay, so wait,
Yeah.
second quarter quell, for
It's-
anyone who maybe needs like a little refresher, a quarter quell is like this
Yeah.
like special Hunger Games.
Special Hunger Games, yeah.
That happens every 25 years.
Right. Yeah.
And the Capitol designs a twist to make it even more deadly
Mhm.
as a way to like remind the districts who's really in control.
Absolutely.
But the 50th Hunger Games, the one that Haymitch is in,
Yeah.
was particularly cruel.
They doubled the tributes. Instead of the usual 2 from each district,
Right.
they reaped 4,
Oh my God.
throwing a total of 48 teenagers into the arena.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, just...
Imagine the pressure and desperation.
Yeah, the pressure. So they doubled.
Yeah.
What was the Capitol thinking?
Well, it's a blatant display of power.
Right.
A way to just amplify the fear
Right.
and make the districts feel completely helpless.
Right.
And for Haymitch, this means his chances of survival just got a whole lot slimmer.
Yeah. So we meet Haymitch as like this young man in District 12 just trying to live his life.
Yeah.
And then boom, his name's called at the Reaping.
Right.
He's torn away from his family, thrust into this horrific situation. And
Yeah.
it's like, how did this experience transform him into the cynical mentor that we see in the Hunger Games? Like,
Yeah.
what happened?
That's what's so fascinating about this prequel.
Yeah.
We get to see the events that shaped him, the trauma that he endured,
Right.
and the choices that he made that ultimately led to his victory.
It wasn't just about winning the games, though, right?
Right. Oh,
His victory, I mean, it became a symbol of defiance
absolutely.
for the districts.
His win wasn't just personal. It represented a crack in the Capitol's facade of control.
Right.
They rely on that illusion of absolute power
Right.
to maintain order.
Mm-hmm.
But Haymitch, by surviving against all odds, exposed their vulnerability.
Yes. The Capitol loves to put on a show,
Yes.
create this like spectacle of fear and obedience.
Okay, for sure.
But Haymitch really like disrupts that narrative.
He does.
Yes, he-
He uses his intelligence and his cunning to outmaneuver
Right.
both the other tributes
Mhm.
and the Capitol itself.
Yeah.
And in doing so, he plants a seed of doubt
Hmm.
in the minds of the districts.
Yeah, and that's where this concept of implicit submission comes into play, right?
Like,
This
yeah.
idea that like the few can control the many simply by creating a system that everyone just accepts without question.
Yeah, the Capitol's power rests on this foundation of unquestioning obedience. Right. But Haymitch's victory, even if it is a small act of rebellion,
Right.
starts to chip away at that foundation.
It's like a tiny tremor
Yes.
that could eventually lead to an earthquake.
That's a great analogy.
So how do they retaliate? The articles mention that Haymitch's victory came at a really heavy price,
Right.
especially for those he cared about.
Yeah, that's one of the most intriguing aspects of this story.
Yeah.
While the sources are kind of vague on the details,
Right.
they hint at a tragic aftermath.
Right.
The Capitol, unable to directly punish Haymitch without turning him into a martyr,
Right.
likely targets those closest to him.
Oh, wow.
It's a classic tactic of totalitarian regimes,
Right.
punishing dissent by proxy
Right.
to instill fear and discourage future rebellions.
It's heartbreaking.
It is.
But it also helps explain why Haymitch becomes so guarded and cynical later on, right?
Right.
Carrying the weight of that loss.
Yeah.
The guilt of knowing that his victory had such a devastating cost.
Exactly. And it's this guilt, this deep understanding of the Capitol's cruelty
Right.
that shapes his approach to mentoring Katniss.
Yeah.
He knows the true stakes of the games, the personal sacrifices required, and the insidious ways the Capitol manipulates and exploits its participants.
Okay, so we've got this brutal arena,
Yeah.
48 desperate tributes, and a young Haymitch fighting for his life.
Right.
But the story doesn't stop there.
No, it doesn't.
We also get glimpses into Haymitch's relationships with the other District 12 tributes.
Yes.
And these relationships become like a crucible for his character.
Yeah, he forms an alliance with Maisley Donner,
Oh, yeah.
which is such a fascinating connection to the original trilogy.
Right.
She's Madge Undersea's aunt, the one who owned the Mockingjay pin that Katniss inherits.
Right. It's like the subtle echo across generations, highlighting how interconnected these stories are.
Exactly. And it makes you wonder, Did their alliance influence Haymitch's later decision to mentor Katniss?
Ooh, that's interesting.
Did he see something of nasally in Katniss? A shared spark of defiance.
Yeah, I love how this prequel adds layers to characters that we already know.
Yeah.
It's like peeling back the onion, revealing the experiences that shaped them.
Exactly.
Hmm.
We see Haymitch struggling with questions of loyalty, betrayal, and self-preservation.
Right.
The games force him to make impossible choices.
Yeah.
Choices that will haunt him for years to come.
Yeah, and then there's the big mystery, how he used the force field to win.
Right.
The articles are a bit vague on the details,
Yeah.
but it's described as a controversial move that angered the Capitol and had tragic consequences.
The fact that it angered the Capitol tells us that Haymitch outsmarted them,
Okay.
exploited a loophole in their carefully constructed system. He challenged their authority. And in Panem, that's a dangerous game to play.
Right. It also raises these questions about like the nature of truth and how it's manipulated by those in power.
Right.
The Capitol wants to control the narrative,
Oh, yes.
to present the games as like this fair competition,
Yeah.
a test of skill and strength.
But Haymitch, using the force field,
Right.
really disrupts that narrative.
It exposes the inherent unfairness of the games,
Yeah.
the way the Capitol stacks the deck in their favor.
It makes you question everything you thought you knew about the games and the people who control them.
It does.
Okay, so we've talked about Haymitch's defiance,
Mm-hmm.
the Capitol's retaliation,
Yeah.
and these deeper themes of power and control.
Right.
But let's not forget about the other District 12 tributes.
Mm-hmm.
We know from the sources that Haymitch wasn't the only one reaped that year.
No.
There's his friend, who is like a sister to him,
Yeah.
an odds maker constantly calculating probabilities,
Right.
and a girl from town who's described as being,
Yeah.
well, not
Never pleasant.
the nicest person.
Yeah.
Yeah, these characters add another layer of complexity to Haymitch's story.
Yeah. How so?
Well, they represent the different ways people cope with trauma
Okay.
and the impossible choices that they're forced to make.
Yeah. Because their fates are intertwined with Haymitch's. The games are a zero-sum game, right?
Right.
And survival often comes at the expense of others.
Absolutely. This creates a moral dilemma for Haymitch.
Right.
Does he prioritize his own survival,
Right.
or does he risk his life to protect those he cares about?
Yeah. Yeah.
These questions are at the heart of Sunrise on the
Mhm.
Reaping,
Mm-hmm.
and they're what make this story so compelling.
All right, so we've covered a lot of ground in this first part of our deep dive.
We have.
We've explored the brutality of the second quarter quell, delved into Haymitch's backstory,
Yeah,
and touched on these deeper themes of power, control, and the fight for truth
absolutely.
that make this prequel so captivating.
But there's so much more to uncover.
Right.
In the next part, we'll delve deeper into Haymitch's relationships,
Oh, yeah.
his strategic choices in the arena,
Okay.
and the tragic aftermath of his victory.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned.
Okay, welcome back, you guys. We are continuing our deep dive into Sunrise on the Reaping. And I'm still like reeling from that whole revelation about the Capitol potentially targeting Haymitch's loved ones as punishment for his victory.
Yeah.
I mean, it just shows how far they're willing to go to maintain control, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It highlights the insidious nature of their power,
Right.
how they manipulate not just the games themselves,
Right.
but also the lives of the tributes, even after the games are over.
So let's talk more about those other District 12 tributes.
Yeah.
We know Haymitch wasn't alone in the arena, right?
Right.
He had this close friend, almost like a sister to him,
Yeah.
an odds maker,
Right.
and then a girl from town who didn't sound too friendly.
Yeah.
How do these characters play into his story?
Well, their presence adds a layer of moral complexity to Haymitch's journey.
Yeah.
Remember, the games force tributes to make impossible choices.
Right.
Do you prioritize your own survival,
Right.
or do you risk your life for those you care about?
Especially when you're trapped in an arena with 47 other desperate teenagers all fighting to the death. I mean,
Yep.
It's hard to imagine the pressure and the emotional toll.
Haymitch's relationship with his friend,
Right.
the one described as a sister,
Hmm.
is particularly interesting.
Yeah.
You know, that kind of bond
Yeah.
forged in childhood
Mm-hmm.
must have been a source of strength for him in the arena.
But it also could have been a source of agonizing decisions,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, yeah.
Would he be willing to sacrifice others to protect her?
Yeah.
Or would he put her life above his own?
These are the kinds of questions
Yeah.
that reveal a character's true nature.
Mm-hmm.
And for Haymitch,
Right.
a young man already grappling with loss and the harsh realities of District 12,
Right.
these choices must have been incredibly difficult.
And then there's the odds maker.
Yeah.
Having someone who can analyze probabilities and predict outcomes could be a huge advantage in the games.
It is.
Right.
It's fascinating to consider how Haymitch, known for his strategic mind,
Mm-hmm.
even in the original trilogy,
Right.
might have utilized the oddsmaker's skills.
Yeah, like, did they work together to assess threats?
Yeah. Anticipate the Capitol's moves,
Mm-hmm.
or even exploit weaknesses in their opponents.
It's like having a human calculator by your side,
Yeah.
constantly crunching numbers and assessing risks.
It makes you wonder, did their collaboration contribute to Haymitch's eventual victory?
It's certainly possible.
Yeah.
And the oddsmaker's presence raises questions about the role of fate versus strategy in the games. Are the outcomes predetermined?
Mm-hmm.
Or can cunning and careful planning tip the scales in your favor?
But let's not forget about that other girl from District 12.
Right.
The one who's described as not very pleasant.
Yeah.
Could she have been a rival?
Yeah.
Like a threat to Haymitch and his alliance?
The sources don't reveal much about her role,
Right.
but her presence hints at potential conflict within the District 12 group.
Mm-hmm.
The games often force tributes from the same district to turn against each other,
Oh, gosh.
creating a heartbreaking betrayal of trust.
It adds another layer of psychological torment to the already horrific experience.
Not only are you fighting for your life against strangers,
Yeah.
but you might also be forced to betray those, you know?
And this internal conflict,
Yeah.
this struggle between loyalty and self-preservation,
Right.
is likely something that Haymitch carries with him long after the games are over.
Yeah, I bet.
It could explain his reluctance to form attachments,
Mm-hmm.
his tendency to push people away.
It's like he's built walls around his heart to protect himself from further pain.
Exactly. And these emotional scars are what make him such a compelling and relatable character.
Right.
He's not a perfect hero.
Right.
He's flawed, jaded, and haunted by his past.
But within those flaws, there's also a deep well of compassion
Yeah.
and a fierce determination to protect those he cares about. It's what makes him such a powerful mentor to Katniss.
He sees in Katniss a reflection of his own rebellious spirit,
Yeah.
his own willingness to fight for what's right, even when the odds are stacked against him.
Speaking of fighting against the odds, we can't ignore Haymitch's alliance with Maisie Donner. Knowing that she's Madge Undersea's aunt
Right.
adds such a poignant layer to this story.
It does.
Well,
It creates a tangible link between Haymitch's past and Katniss's future.
Right,
It makes you wonder, did Haymitch see the Mockingjay Pin Maisie War?
right.
Did he understand its significance even then?
And did their shared experience in the games,
Yeah.
their alliance, and ultimately Maisley's death,
Right.
influence Haymitch's decision to become a mentor?
It's certainly possible.
Did he feel a sense of responsibility to protect future tributes, especially those from District 12 after losing Maisie?
Haymitch's mentorship of Katniss could be seen as a way of honoring Maisley's memory,
Okay.
of carrying on her spirit of defiance.
It's also worth noting that the Mockingjay pin, which becomes such a powerful symbol of rebellion in the original trilogy, has its roots in this prequel.
Exactly. Sunrise on the Reaping provides context for the symbols and themes that will become central to the later books.
Right.
We see the origins of the Mockingjay as a symbol of hope, the seeds of rebellion being planted,
Right.
and the evolution of the capital's control over the districts.
It's like watching a tapestry being woven,
Yes.
thread by thread,
Wow.
revealing the intricate connections and hidden patterns that make up the larger story.
And one of the most crucial threads in this tapestry
Right.
is Haymitch's use of the force field to win the games.
Okay.
This event, still shrouded in mystery,
Mhm.
is clearly a turning point in his life.
The sources describe it as this controversial move, one that angered the Capitol and had tragic consequences,
Yeah.
but they don't reveal exactly how he used the force field
Right.
or what those consequences were.
It's a major cliffhanger.
It is.
What we can deduce
Yeah.
is that Haymitch's victory wasn't simply a matter of brute force or luck.
Right.
It was a calculated act of defiance,
Right.
a demonstration of his intelligence and his willingness to exploit the Capitol's own system against them.
It's like he outsmarted them on their own playing field, exposing the flaws in their carefully crafted illusion of control.
And that's a dangerous precedent to set.
Yeah.
The Capitol can't tolerate such blatant defiance.
Right.
They need to maintain the appearance of absolute power
Right.
to keep the districts in line.
So they retaliate, but instead of punishing Haymitch directly,
Right.
they target those closest to him.
It's a chilling reminder of the price of rebellion in Panem.
It is, and it explains why Haymitch becomes so disillusioned and cynical.
Yeah,
He survives the games, but he loses so much in the process. He
exactly.
carries the weight of that loss, the guilt of knowing his victory came at such a high cost.
It's a tragic but powerful reminder that even in victory, There can be profound loss and sacrifice.
And this theme of sacrifice, of the personal cost of rebellion, will echo throughout the entire Hunger Games series.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've explored Haymitch's alliances, his strategic brilliance, and the tragic consequences of his victory.
Yeah.
But I'm still curious about those visual symbols on the book cover.
Right.
The songbird, the snake, the horseshoe, and the sunrise.
Yeah.
What do you make of them?
They're like pieces of a puzzle,
Yeah.
each one hinting at a deeper meaning.
Yeah.
The songbird, often a symbol of hope and freedom, could represent Maisley Donner and the fleeting connection that she and Haymitch shared in the arena.
And her death, which we know happened during the games,
Right.
could be symbolized by the snake,
Yeah.
a creature often associated with danger and mortality.
It's like the two symbols represent the duality of Haymitch's experience.
Right.
The hope and camaraderie he finds in the alliance.
Right.
And the devastating loss he suffers.
What about the horseshoe?
Yeah.
Traditionally, it's a symbol of luck,
Right.
but in this context, it seems almost ironic,
It does a little bit.
doesn't it?
Yeah.
Haymitch's victory wasn't simply a matter of luck. It was a result of his intelligence, his cunning, and his willingness to break the rules.
Exactly. The horseshoe could represent the illusion of luck
Mm-hmm.
that the Capitol wants to perpetuate.
Right.
They want the games to appear random,
Uh-huh.
a test of fate,
Mm.
when in reality they control every aspect of the arena and the tribute's destinies.
But Haymitch disrupts that illusion
He does.
by using his own skills and ingenuity to outsmart them.
Right. And finally, we have the sunrise.
Okay.
This could symbolize the dawn of a new understanding for Haymitch.
Right.
He enters the games as this young man full of hope and maybe even a bit naive,
Yeah.
but he emerges a changed person.
Right. He's seen the true face of the Capitol,
Yeah.
experienced the brutality of the games firsthand,
Mhm.
lost people he cared about.
Right.
This experience forges him into the hardened, cynical mentor we meet in the original trilogy.
The sunrise could also foreshadow the eventual rebellion against the Capitol.
Right.
Haymitch's victory, although a personal one, plants a seed of defiance that will grow and spread in the years to come.
So as we move towards the final part of our deep dive, we have to ask, how does Sunrise on the Reaping enhance our understanding of the broader Hunger Games universe? How does Haymitch's story connect to the events that will unfold decades later?
And perhaps most importantly, what lessons can we learn from his experience about the nature of power, control, and the fight for freedom?
Oh, good questions.
Stay tuned for the final part of our deep dive where we'll explore these questions and more.
Yes, stay tuned. Okay, so we're back for like the final part of our deep dive into Sunrise on the Reaping.
Yeah.
And I feel like we are ready to kind of like connect all the dots here.
Right.
We've talked about Haymitch's experience in the games,
Yeah.
his strategic brilliance,
Right.
the tragic consequences of his victory, and those like really interesting symbols on the book cover.
Yeah.
But how does this all like fit into the bigger picture of Pandem and the events of like the original trilogy?
Yeah, that's the question that keeps ringing in my mind too.
Right.
We've seen how Haymitch's victory disrupted the Capitol's narrative, challenged their control,
Right.
and potentially sparked a flicker of hope in the districts.
Right.
But his story doesn't end with the 50th Hunger Games.
Right.
It ripples outwards, influencing events for decades to come.
So even though this is a prequel, it feels like it's adding a whole new dimension to the original Hunger Games trilogy.
Absolutely.
Especially to Haymitch's character.
Before we knew Haymitch as this jaded, cynical mentor,
Right.
we saw his pain, his struggles with alcoholism,
Right.
and his protectiveness of Katniss and Peeta,
Mm-hmm.
but we didn't have the full context.
Right.
Now, with Sunrise on the Reaping, we understand the depth of his trauma, the weight of his sacrifices, and the reasons behind his guarded nature.
It makes his decision to mentor Katniss and Peeta even more meaningful, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's not just a duty he's fulfilling. It's a personal mission, a chance to maybe make amends for the past, to guide these tributes towards a different outcome than the one he experienced.
And think about his strategies,
Right.
his advice to Katniss.
Yeah.
It's all informed by his own experiences in the games.
Right.
He knows the importance of appearances of playing the Capitol's game, while also subtly subverting it.
He understands the power of symbolism.
Yeah.
How even a small act of defiance can spark a rebellion.
Right. And he sees in Katniss that same spark,
Right.
that same willingness to challenge the status quo.
It's like Haymitch is passing the torch,
Yeah.
sharing his hard-won wisdom with the next generation of rebels.
Exactly.
He's not just training them to survive the games.
Right.
He's preparing them to fight for a better future.
He is.
But, okay, let's back up a bit.
Okay.
We know that Haymitch's victory had some really dire consequences.
Yes.
Especially for his loved ones.
Right.
The Capitol retaliated, but the sources are pretty vague about what actually happened.
It's one of the most intriguing aspects of the story.
Right.
The way Collins leaves us with these unanswered questions.
Yeah.
These haunting implications.
It makes you want more.
It does.
Doesn't it?
Yeah.
But we can make some educated guesses, right?
We can.
Based on what we know about the Capitol's methods.
Right. They're all about control.
Right.
About maintaining the illusion of power and order.
Publicly punishing a victor. I mean, that would create a martyr.
Yeah.
A symbol of defiance that could inspire further rebellion.
Exactly.
So they had to find, like, a more insidious way to retaliate.
Exactly. And what better way to punish a rebel than by taking away what they hold dear?
Yeah.
By targeting his family, his friends,
Right.
anyone he loved. The Capitol sends a chilling message.
Right.
Defiance comes at a price, and that price will be paid by those you cherish most.
It's a cruel tactic, but it's effective.
It is.
It instills fear, not just in Haymitch, but in anyone who might dare to question the Capitol's authority.
And this fear,
Yeah.
this understanding of the Capitol's ruthlessness, permeates every aspect of life in the districts.
Right. It explains why people are so reluctant to speak out to resist.
Yeah.
They've seen what happens to those who defy the Capitol.
Right.
And they don't want to risk the same fate for themselves or their loved ones.
But then comes Katniss.
Right.
She enters the games not out of choice, but out of love for her sister. And yet through her actions, her defiance, her refusal to play by the Capitol's rules,
Right.
she ignites a spark of hope that spread like wildfire.
And Haymitch recognizes that spark.
He does.
He sees in Katniss the potential to change everything,
Yes.
to break the cycle of fear and oppression.
He becomes her guide, her protector, her strategist.
Yeah.
He uses his knowledge of the games, his understanding of the Capitol's tactics, and his own painful experiences to help her navigate this deadly arena.
And in doing so,
Yeah.
he fulfills a destiny he never could have imagined.
Right.
He becomes a key player in the rebellion, a mentor to the Mockingjay,
Yeah.
the symbol of hope that will eventually lead Panem to freedom.
Wow, when you put it like that,
Right.
it's clear that Sunrise on the Reaping is so much more than just a prequel.
It is.
It's an essential piece of the Hunger Games puzzle, deepening our understanding of the characters, the events, and the themes that make this series so powerful and resonant.
It's a story about the cyclical nature of power and oppression, the courage it takes to challenge the status quo, and the enduring power of hope, even in the face of overwhelming darkness.
It is.
Okay, so we've talked about the themes, the characters,
Yeah.
the impact of Sunrise on the Reaping, on the broader Hunger Games universe.
Right.
But before we wrap up, I kind of want to go back to those visual symbols on the book cover again.
Okay.
Now that we've really explored the story, they
Yeah.
seem even more significant.
Are like layers of meaning, each one revealing a new facet of the story.
Okay, so like the songbird,
Yeah.
representing hope and freedom, could symbolize Maisley Donner's memory and the impact she had on Haymitch.
Right.
Or it could represent the spirit of rebellion that flickers in the districts, waiting for the right moment to ignite.
The snake, often associated with danger and deception, could symbolize the Capitol's insidious control,
Right.
their willingness to manipulate and exploit the tributes for their own amusement.
Or it could represent the personal demons Haymitch wrestles with,
Right.
the guilt and the trauma that haunt him.
The horseshoe, a symbol of luck, could represent the illusion of chance
Right.
that the Capitol perpetuates.
Right.
The idea that the games are a fair competition, when in reality they're a carefully orchestrated spectacle of violence and oppression.
And the sunrise,
Yeah.
that image of dawn breaking over the horizon, could represent the hope for a new beginning, a future free from the Capitol's tyranny.
Right. Or it could symbolize Haymitch's personal journey.
Yeah.
The way he emerges from the darkness of the games, forever changed, but still carrying a flicker of defiance within him.
I like that.
Yeah.
These symbols, like the story itself, are open to interpretation.
They are.
They invite us to think critically,
Yeah.
to question the narratives that we're presented with, and to find our own meaning within the rich tapestry of the Hunger Games universe.
So as we reach the end of our deep dive, we
Yeah.
leave you with this final thought.
Okay.
Sunrise on the Reaping is more than just a prequel. It's a story that challenges us to think about the nature of power, the price of freedom, and the enduring strength of the human spirit.
It's a story that will stay with you long after you turn the final page,
Yeah.
prompting you to look at the world around you with a more critical eye and to ask yourself, what would I be willing to sacrifice for the sake of justice?
Yeah.
How would I fight back against a system designed to crush me?
And remember, even in the darkest of times, hope can flicker and change is always possible.
Ooh, I like that.
Keep those questions in mind as you explore the world of Panem and never stop diving deep.
Thanks for listening, everybody.